So in Who Am I, there's a section which talks about, I can't remember it very well. It talks about breath control and breathing. And it talks about how the breath and the mind have the same source, meaning the self. Everything comes from the self. So the breath comes from the self, the mind comes from the self. So he says, if you seek the source of the mind, which is self-inquiry, because you're seeking the self. Self is the source of the mind. So if you seek the source of the mind, which is the self, that's self-inquiry. Or you seek the source of the breath, which is also self-inquiry, right? Because the source of the breath is the self. So you're going towards the source, which is the subject. He explains it all in the text. And he defines his words, so this is what the meaning is. He says, if you go to the source of the mind stops. And if you go to the source of the breath stops. But he says, if you go to the source, the breath and the mind both stop. Whether you look for the source of the mind, if you look for the source of the mind, both the breath and the mind will disappear. If you go to the source of the breath, both the breath and the mind will disappear. Really, what he's not said there clearly in that paragraph, but he does say earlier, is that when you go into the heart, which is the source, which is the self, the entirety of Maya disappears. He says there's no body, mind, and world at all. He says that is mauna, silence. When he says be still, this is what he means. He means do self-inquiry, go into the self, body, mind, and world all stop. It's not just the body being silent or the mind being still. It's you going into the self and all these phenomena disappearing. He makes it very clear right at the beginning of Who Am I? Now, there is this section that Ray alludes to where he says, when you're asleep, the mind is no longer there, but by the power of God, the body continues to breathe. And this is basically so other people will realize you're alive or something like this, or you don't die or something. This is a concession. This is just a concessionary teaching, just to give some superficial explanation to why the body's breathing. And he does this all the time. It's just that it's not the highest teaching. It's just a concessionary teaching, just to, because people have the natural question, well, if in deep sleep there's no body, mind, and world, how come I can see Ray breathing when he's asleep or something like that? So he says, oh, it's just by the will of God that happens. Why? Because Bhagwan's style is not to force the highest teaching onto people. He gives the teaching in accordance to the question, the way it's asked. Why does he do that? It's because he doesn't have any control in that sense. The teacher is like a reflection of the seeker. Whatever the seeker puts out to the teacher, that's what the teacher gives back to them. It's not, he does that on purpose or not on purpose. It's just, that's all he can do. It's like a mirror. So whoever's asking the questions, the answers are given on the level of the question. Right? Does that make sense? Another analogy, instead of saying a mirror, is like a wall, and you can throw a ball against the wall, like a bouncy ball or a tennis ball against the wall. And if you throw it hard, it comes back hard. If you throw it soft, it comes back softly. If you throw it at this angle, it comes back at that angle. If you throw it at another angle, it comes back at the other angle. That's just the nature of the ball and the wall. The same with the guru. The guru can only give answers on the level of the questioner. Because the guru actually has no teaching. It's just, the guru is God. So when you throw the ball at God, God just gives it back to you. But reformed, with grace. So that answer is just because I assume the questioner was on that level, the shristi dristi level, the body mind level. So the answer comes back in that way. Does that make sense, right? I think, now Hester quoted from the Path of Sri Ramana Part 1. I think that is explained in the Path of Sri Ramana Part 1, in one of the middle chapters, where it talks about that very section that Hester mentioned, which is the teaching that actually in deep sleep there is no body, mind, or world there at all. This is Bhagavan's testimony to us. This is his testament. This is his experience. So if we have any faith in his teachings, we have to accept this, or try to accept it, put the teachings into practice, and then we will realize it for ourselves. Hopefully you now know, when I say you realize it for yourself, what it actually means is you become Turiya. And in Turiya, when you realize it for yourself, all there is pure consciousness, bliss, love, eternally. Not even eternally, because eternally means, it implies time, means forever. It's not even forever, because there's no time. That's how you know time is an illusion. You don't know time is an illusion. It's just that there's no time. When you ask the appearance of a guru, which is actually Maya, they say something like, oh, you discover time is an illusion. You discover space is an illusion. But it's not that really. Actually, there is no time and space in reality. That's all part of a dream. Is this philosophy? No. This is not philosophy. This is the nature of reality. How to discover it? Only one way. You have to discover what you are. How to discover what you are? Go into Jagrat Sushupti. How to go into Jagrat Sushupti? Go towards a subject. If you try and still your mind on an object, that stillness will be temporary. You still your mind by going to the subject, you go into Jagrat Sushupti. This is why other ways don't work, because they're all object-based.